this presentation, we'll keep doing truth table problems, checking for validity of different arguments. Like I said in the previous lecture, I'm just going to keep giving you these definitions for validity, reminding you that we're only interested in instances in a truth table in which we find all true premises. Any instance in a truth table in which you don't see all true premises is just not important for determining whether or not the argument itself is valid. We're only interested in cases where all the premises are true. And so an argument starts as being valid because it's just assumed there are no instances in which all the premises are true and the conclusion is false. But then we invalidate it if we find at least one. Only takes one. There can be multiple instances in which the premises are all true and the conclusion is false, but it only takes one, even if all the lines are true premises and true conclusions except for one, in which you have all true premises and a false conclusion. It's still invalid. It only takes one. And in situations in which it's invalid, you have to have a counterexample. So here on the first one, we've got two premises. And our conclusion is just a single letter, so it's here in our key already. We don't need to make an extra column for it. So looking at this first premise, we have two operators. The ampersand is within a set of parentheses, so we got to do that one first. We're going to ignore the R. Remember that an ampersand is true wherever both of them are true, which are going to be here in 1 and 5. The rest of them, at least one of the conjuncts, are false. And so now we can add in our arrow. And so our arrow is, this is going to be our right side. So again, you got to visualize that these values are over here on the right hand side. I'm not going to copy them over there, but we got to make sure that we're treating this as our left side or our antecedent and this one as our right side or our consequent. So an arrow is true wherever the left side or the antecedent is false, or the right side, the consequent, is true. And so it's going to be true for all of these, with the exception of this one. And we can erase this column now. We don't need it. And so that's that premise. Now for this tilde p, all we got to do is take these values and flip them over. So t's will become f's and f's will become t's. Now those are our two premises, so we can check for validity. So we're going to look for instances in which they're both true. And we can, ignore lines in which they are not both true. And what's our value for our conclusion? Well, we got two instances in which it's true and two instances in which it's false, but remember that it only takes one instance of a false conclusion and all true premises to make it invalid, and in those situations we need a counterexample. I'll just pick this top one here, and so FTF, but you could have just as easily picked all three of them as being false. Looking at this next one, we've got two premises again, and our conclusion is just a single letter again. Doing this first premise, we've got a wedge as our operator within the parentheses, so we're just going to look at Q and R. Remember that a wedge is true wherever one of the sides are true. And false where they're both false. And now we can bring back in the P arrow. So this is our right side here. Our consequent, our P is going to be our antecedent. So arrow is true wherever the left side's false, or the right side's true, which in this case it's a lot of them. Not there though. And so it's going to be true, 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 false, true. We can get rid of this right column because that's not our main operator. Looking at this next premise, we have two operators and we see that we've got it written like this. So you gotta remember that in such a situation, there are no parentheses, so this tilde only covers the Q. And so now we gotta do the tilde Q first, and then we'll do the ampersand second. So ignoring the ampersand P for right now, we're just going to take these values here and we're going to flip them over. So T's will become F's, and F's will become T's. Like so. Now we can bring back in the ampersand. And so we're looking for instances in which they're both true. That's one here. And we got one here. So the rest of these are going to be false. Remember, we would have done the tilde second if it would have been written not like it is, but if it would have been written like this. If there were parentheses, we would have had to do the ampersand first, but since there are no parentheses, we do the tilde first and then do the ampersand. So with that, we can erase our left side here. And now we can check for validity, looking for instances in which they're all true, or the premises are both true. They're both true here. And that looks like the only situation. And in that situation, well, the conclusion's also true. So this one is valid. And since it's valid, we don't have to have a counterexample. Here on this next one, we've got two premises. Here's the first one. Here's the second one. And then our conclusion does have an operator this time, so it'll be over here. Now, focusing on this first premise, we have a set of parentheses and a wedge within it. So a wedge is true wherever one of the sides are true, which are going to be in all those instances. Now with that, we can bring back in the Q double arrow. And double arrow is true wherever both of them match. So they both match here, they both match here, both match here, and they both match here. And so wherever they match, they're true. Wherever one of them is false and one of them is true, it's going to be false. And so we can erase those. And that's that premise. Now for this next one, it's P and Q, pretty simple, just one operator. And so it's going to be true where both conjuncts are true. And so it's going to be true here and here. And it's going to be false in all these other instances here. And so that one's pretty simple. Moving on to the conclusion, also pretty simple. It's just the letter R, but with a tilde. And so we just got to flip them. from T's to F's, and F's to T's. And then we can actually check for validity now. And we're going to look for instances in which all the premises are true. Those would be the only two. And in those situations, or I guess I can cross out these other ones, make it a little bit clearer. We're not interested in those. And so we got, looks like one instance in which we have true premises and a false conclusion here in the first one. So it's going to be invalid. Can have a counterexample of all trues. Again, just taking these and copying them over. In this one, we have one premise, and then we just have our conclusion. So here again, we just gotta do the one within the parentheses first. So we're gonna look at just Q and P. That's true wherever they both match, and they'll both match here in 1 and 5. And then, once we got that side, we can bring back in the R arrow, and so our R is going to be our left side or our antecedent, and then our Q and P is our right side or our consequent. So remember that an arrow is true wherever the left side is false or the right side is true. So in those situations, it's going to be true. In the other situation, it's going to be false. You can erase this column over here. And now we have just our conclusion to do. Here again, you can see there's a tilde and an arrow. The tilde is just over the R, so we got to do the tilde first. So the tilde R, we'll just take these values, flip them over. And we can bring back in the Q arrow. So ignoring these parts. Q is our left side, our tilde R is our right side, so an arrow is true wherever the left side's false, or the right side's true. And so we've got true, 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 true. These ones are false. And so we can erase all of that. Get rid of this column. Check for validity. We've only got the one premise, so the premise is true here, 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 and here. You can ignore that row, and that row. We got a bunch of trues down here, but we do have a false one up here. So one false one makes it invalid. And so since it's invalid, we have to have a counterexample. And the only counterexample we've got is the one up here. Look at this next one. Got two premises. Got one there. Got one here. Our conclusion is just the R. And so looking at this first one, because there are no parentheses, the tilde is just set over P, so we'll do the tilde first. So we'll take all these values and just flip them over. Erase that. Bring back in the ampersand Q. Can ignore both of these columns in the key. And so we're looking for instances in which they are both true. They're both true here. And they're both true here. That's it. So we can get rid of this column here. And now that's one of our premises. Now we gotta just do this other one. So what's within the parentheses is a wedge. R or P. And so it just matters where one of them is true. And now we can bring in the Q double arrow again. And so we can just ignore these for right now. Looking for instances in which they match. They match here and here, here, and down here. So we've got trues wherever they match, falses wherever one of them is false and the other one is true. Erase this column now because we don't need it anymore. And so now we can test for validity, looking for instances in which they are both true. We've got one here, and that looks like it. And in that situation, our conclusion is also true, so that makes it valid. Saying that our counterexample, we don't need one. Only need a counterexample when it's invalid. Here are our two premises. Here's our conclusion. Looking at the first premise, we've got an ampersand between some parentheses. So we'll do that one first. It's going to be true wherever they match. That's going to be here in lines 1 and 5. And then we've got our R arrow. So our R is our left side. It's going to be, the arrow is going to be true wherever our left side's false or our right side is true. And so that's the value for the whole statement there. Moving on to the next premise, we've got just the double arrow. We can ignore this Q column, so it's going to be true wherever they match. It's like 1, 3, 6, and 8. And then we just got an ampersand for our R and Q. So wherever they're both true, which are just going to be here in 1 and 2. And then the rest of them are false. Checking for validity, we've got true premises here. We've got true premises here and true premises down here. The rest of these we can ignore. And so it's going to be invalid because we've actually got two instances in which we have a false conclusion. And so we'll have to make a counterexample. I'll just pick this one. And so I'll copy those values over here. Here we've got two premises. First one's here. Second one is here. Our conclusion is just a single letter, letter Q. Looking at this first premise, we've got a wedge in between our parentheses, so we'll do the wedge first. And it's just R or Q. The wedge is true wherever one of the sides are true. So it's going to be true in lines 1 through 6. And then we've got our wedge statement here. It's also going to be true wherever one of the sides are true. So you got trues all the way down through here on line 6 on our right disjunct or our right side. And then we've got trues all the way down here. So all of them are going to be true with the exception of line 8. And so with that, we can to the next premise. Nope, I just erased all the ones that I needed. This will be true all the way through here. False on this one. Yeah, erase this one. Again, mistakes can be made, so make sure you're careful with doing it. It's just a lot of work and keeping track of things, so got to be careful, and that includes me. So here we've got two different operators. One's the tilde, one's the ampersand. Ampersand's within the parentheses, so we've got to do that one first. We're going to ignore the Q in our key for right now. We're going to look for instances in which both the conjuncts are true. That would be here and here. The rest of them are going to be false. And then we just have to take those values and flip them over because we've got a tilde in front of them. So T's become F's and F's become T's. And this time we're going to erase the right column. And now we can check for validity. So we're going to look for instances in which we have all true premises. That would be here, 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 and here. So we can ignore this row, and this row. And looking at our Q value, we're going to look to see if there are any instances in which we have a false conclusion, and we do right there. So this one is also going to be invalid. And then we're going to have to have a counterexample. So counterexample could be one of those two different lines, this one or this one, and this time I'll just pick this one. So counterexample will be TF, and that's that one. So here in this last one, we just have a premise and our conclusion. And so we just have to do the wedge within the parentheses first. So we'll ignore that for right now. And a wedge is true wherever one of the sides are true. So that's going to be a lot of these here. Only rows 4 and 8 are going to be instances in which P or Q is false. So we can erase all those. And then now we're bringing our ampersand. We're going to look for instances in which both of those are true. That's going to be here in the first 3 rows. So these 3 are true. The other ones are going to be false. Now look at this next one. We've got 3 different operators. And 2 of them are within parentheses. And so it doesn't really matter which ones we do first, just as long as we do the parentheses ones first. So we'll ignore this side of the disjunct and we'll just focus on the R and P first. So R and P, where they both match? Well, they both match there, and they both match here. True and true. Rest of them are false. So, can erase that. Now we're going to focus on the other operator within a set of parentheses, so the R and Q. So where do those both match? Well, those both match here and here. And then the rest of them are going to be false. And now we just got to compare those using our wedge rule. So our wedge rule is going to say that these are true, and the rest of them are false. Because we got a true, and a true, and a true, true. Rest of them, they are all false, so they're, since both disjuncts are false, makes the whole sentence false, so we can erase these columns here. And then check for validity. Well, we've got 3 instances of which the premise is true, and in all 3 of those instances, the conclusion is also true. So this one's going to be valid. And since it's valid, there's no counterexample. So that concludes the set of practice problems.